We've learned about the essentials for React development, including state, JSX, and development tooling. Now let's get some more practical experience by creating a small to-do list application. Here's what the finished result could look like. It will display a list of completed and incomplete to-dos. The user will be able to add a new to-do, also to toggle a to-do, and to delete it. The application should also display statistics on the number of completed or incomplete to-dos. This list shows everything our to-do list application should do. You will also find an example solution in the description. This will be a guided project, meaning you can follow along with me, but you can also attempt it on your own. I would recommend trying it on your own, but if you get stuck at some point for more than 15 minutes, consult the walkthrough videos. I will start out with a new React TypeScript project, which I've created via Create React App. I've already executed npm run start to launch the development server. As a first step, I will get rid of some of the demo code. For now, my application should only contain the heading to do. I can also get rid of the contents in app.css for now. And I can remove some imports. And now I can start working on my to-do app from here. The first proper task I will tackle will be to display a list of completed and incomplete to-dos. These to-dos will come from the application's state. As I'm working with TypeScript, I will start out with a type declaration for the structure of the to-dos. I can do that in a separate file, which I'll call types.ts. Here, I'll create a type named to-do, which will have three properties: ID, title, and completed. And I can export this declaration. Inside the app component, I will start out by creating some state, which will be an array of to-dos. I can use auto-completion to type out use state and also add an import statement automatically. This state will be an array of to-do elements. I will have to import the to-do declaration here as well, either by using auto-completion again or by using the quick fix functionality after writing the line. For demonstration purposes, I will fill this state entry with some placeholder data. I will regularly use the Prettier plugin to automatically format the code. I can trigger this from the command palette or via the associated keyboard shortcut. Now I would like to display the content of the state's to-dos array to the user. I will create a UL element, which I would like to fill with li elements. In order to display the to-dos from the state, I will switch to TypeScript and map over the to-do data. I will pass an arrow function to the map function. And if the array is named to-dos, I will fittingly call the arrow function's argument to-do. For each to-do, I would like to create an li element with the to-do's title as the text content. After saving, I will take a look at the output in the browser to verify the code is working as intended. I should also add a key property to all the repeated elements. I can distinguish between completed and incomplete to-dos by marking them with different prefixes. And I'll put all of this text into a span so I can add some styling later. I can also represent the to-do's state by displaying checkboxes next to the text. Here I can bind to the element's checked property. This is what the results look like for now. For now, these checkboxes won't be interactive, but we can add some interactivity later on. I've created a basic static display of to-dos, with no interactivity yet. But I can experiment with state changes by using the React developer tools, where I can modify the state of a component and see the effects. Here I see two to-do items. I can choose the first one and toggle it, or change its title. I'm done with the basic display functionality. Now I will improve the styling by a little. I'll open up app.tsx and app.css side by side and add some CSS classes. First off, I'll want to have the app element with a max width of 600 pixels and the horizontal margins set to auto. I'll create a new class named ToDoList for the list container. I'll reset some styling in here, setting list style to none so the bullet points won't show up, and setting margin and padding to 0. Also, I'll create a to-do item class. Giving all to-do items some padding margin and a solid gray border. To-do items should appear in two different variants, either completed or incomplete. So I'll add two CSS classes with modifiers in their name. And I'll add a conditional to the assignment of class name. And this will be the result. We've created a static display of to-dos with some styling. Next up, we'll be adding some interactivity to our application. The next functionality I'd like to add to my to-do list application is adding a to-do via a form. I'll start out with a function that will update the state. I'll call it add to-do. You may remember a similar function that we wrote previously when we were dealing with immutable data. Not modifying the state directly will be important here as well. The add to-do function should receive the title of the new to-do, and it should call set to-dos in the end to update the state. I'll write some code that will generate a new, locally unique ID that can be used to identify the to-do. And the new to-do will look like this. Finally, I can add this new to-do to the existing to-dos in the state. Next, I'd like to connect the add to-do function to the user interface. For the user interface, I'll create a form with an input and an add button. I'll add some state for the input text. And connect it with the input. I can verify that the connection is working correctly in the developer tools by changing the state in the UI and also in the developer tools and seeing that they are in sync. Next, I will write an event listener for the form's submit event. The first thing to do here is prevent the event's default behavior. And then I'll add a custom behavior by calling add to do and passing in the new title from the state. Also, after a to-do has been added, I'll reset the input text to an empty string. As we can see, adding a to-do is working as desired in the browser. I want to point out one choice I've made in this implementation. I'm explicitly passing the title into the add to do function as a parameter. I didn't have to do this as I would also have direct access to the new title entry in the state. The reason why I went for this approach is that it keeps two aspects of the state more separated. Code that deals with the input text, connecting the input to the state, resetting the input text, and code that deals with the array of to-dos. Keeping these separate from the start is a little cleaner, and it will make it easier to split our application into components later on. Once the functionality of adding to-dos works, I can remove the placeholder to-dos from the initial state, leaving it as an empty array. Next, I'll add the possibility to toggle to-dos from the user interface, changing their completed state. For this, I'll write a new function which updates the status of a to-do. This function will receive the ID of the to-do and the new completed state. Note that I could also have created a toggle function where I wouldn't have to provide the completed parameter. Both approaches are valid. Inside of setToDoCompleted, I will call setToDos and pass in an updated array of to-dos. For this, I'll map over all existing to-dos. And then if I would write this implementation, for now all to-dos would still remain the same. Now I'd like to find one to-do based on its ID and replace its completed property. All other to-dos should remain unchanged. I'll do this via a conditional operator. I'll check if todo.id equals the ID parameter, and if so, I would change the to-do, and otherwise the to-do should remain the same. So in here, I have to enter the updated to-do, which would be all the properties of the previously existing to-do item, but the completed property should be replaced. Then I'll connect this function to the checkboxes next to the to-dos. Here I'll bind to the onChange event and based on that, I would call setToDoCompleted with the ID and event.target.checked as its new value. The result for now is an application where I can add and toggle to-dos. Next, I'll implement the possibility to delete a to-do. Once more, I'll start out with a function which updates the state. The function will be called delete to-do, and it will receive an ID of a to-do. I will call set to-dos, and I will pass in the to-dos filtered so that one of the to-dos gets removed. And the criterion for that is that the ID should not match the specified ID. Then I'll connect this to the user interface. Inside the to-do item, I will create a button and on that button I will have an on-click listener which will call the delete to-do function and pass in the to-do's ID. And I'll verify the behavior in the browser. Finally, I'd like to improve the UI a little bit by moving the delete button to the right of the to-do items. I just realized a small mistake I made earlier. The span I included here was not supposed to include the input element. So I'll move the opening tag of the span down here before continuing. Now I can align the button to the right by assigning a new class named to-do item text in the template, adding display flex to the to-do item, and adding a new selector here for to-do item text and assigning flex grow to 1. And this will be the corresponding result. Lastly, I'd like to display some statistics concerning the to-dos. I can do that by creating so-called derived values from existing state. The first value could be num to-dos for the total number of to-dos. I can easily determine this by just using to-dos.length. Next, I want the number of completed to-dos. I can get that from the to-dos by filtering by their status and then taking the length of that array. And finally, the number of incomplete to-dos is the difference between those two numbers. And I can display these three numbers to the user. So now I've completed this basic to-do application. If you want to take a look at the complete code, a link will be in the description. You can also continue working from here, potentially improving the styling or adding some sorting or filtering functionality to the application.